6 Mexican states will go to the polls on Sunday to elect their new governors. In the United States, a new armed attack left at least 3 people dead and 11 injured in Philadelphia. In Bangladesh, at least 33 people were killed and more than 450 were injured when a fire broke out after a massive explosion. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the teleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. 6 Mexican states will go to the polls on Sunday, representing more than 11 million citizens to elect their new governors. The citizens will elect the governors of the states of Aguascalientes, Durango, Hidalgo, Oaxaca, Quintana Roo, and Tamaulipas. In the state of Durango, 39 municipal presidencies, 39 municipal unions, and 327 regidorias will also be elected, while in Quintana Roo they will also vote for 15 deputies of relative majority and 10 deputies of proportional representation. The Electoral Authority informed that 21,000 posts will be disputed, which represents 12.4% of the total. In Colombia, a recent poll showed that Gustavo Petro, the candidate for the historical pact, leads the voter intention for the presidential election set for June 19th. According to a poll by the National Consulting Center, Petro leads the preference with 44.9%, ahead of the candidate for the League of Anti-Corruption Rulers, Rodolfo Hernandez, who would have 41% of the voter intention. The study showed that Hernandez leads the preference in Antioquia, the coffee-growing region, and the Central Eastern region with margins of 10 points over Petro, while Petro leads in the capital city of Bogota, the Caribbean region, and the Pacific with differences of at least 30 points over Hernandez. A court in Colombia ordered President Iván Duque to be fined and placed under house arrest for 5 days, citing the head of state failure to comply with a previous ruling that demanded he protect a national park. Duque was found to be in contempt of court for failing to enact measures to protect the Los Nevados National Park as ordered by Colombia's Supreme Court in 2020, the Superior Court of Ibagué said in a statement explaining its ruling. The court also imposed a fine on the president of roughly $4,000 and ordered that he create a special unit of police or military members to help carry out conservation work at the park. For his part, the president, in addition to dismissing the arrest order as unconstitutional, assured that he had certainly complied with the protection of ecosystems in Colombia. In Puerto Rico, hundreds of citizens gathered at a convention center where federal lawmakers held a public hearing to decide the future of the political status of the island. Dozens of people, from politicians to retirees and young people, demonstrated against the island's current territorial status. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens but cannot vote in presidential elections, are denied certain federal benefits, and their congressional representative has limited voting powers. The hearing comes 2 weeks after a group of U.S. lawmakers proposed the first binding plebiscite offering voters 3 options: statehood, independence, or independence with free association. In the United States, a new armed attack left at least 3 people dead and 11 injured in Philadelphia. The incident took place on a street northeast of the city of Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania. According to the Philadelphia police, 14 people were shot and 2 men and 1 woman were pronounced dead within minutes of arriving at the hospital. Law enforcement officials specified that several shooters opened fire in the South Street area and that one of them dropped his weapon and fled the scene after law enforcement officers responded to the assault. According to the Gun Violence Archive website, some 152 children have been killed in 239 mass shootings recorded so far in 2022, with over 20 of them occurring after the Uvalde school shooting in Texas. United States authorities reported severe floodings in South Florida as a result of the heavy rains caused by the tropical disturbance that is affecting the area since Saturday. The U.S. National Hurricane Center, based in Miami, warned that the storm could leave up to 15 inches of water accumulation in some points of southern Florida, a situation that they warn will cause considerable flooding in urban areas and could produce tornadoes in the next few hours. The system is expected to become Tropical Storm Alex in the Atlantic as it moves farther away from Florida. Heavy rains and flooding are expected to spread over portions of western Cuba, central Florida, South Florida, the Keys, and the Bahamas during the weekend and early this week. In Brazil, after the heavy rains in the last days, the Pernambuco governor's office announced a 100 million reais emergency aid package. However, the population claims that the authorities do not have a clear plan. Our correspondent Brian Meyer reports.
According to the Pernambuco governor's office, 9,000 people have been displaced from houses that were condemned or destroyed during last week's landslides in Greater Recife. But according to residents of the disaster zones, the government hasn't provided an adequate relocation plan.
A lot of people in this neighborhood lost their houses and documents, lost everything except their lives, thanks to Jesus. I'm one of them. I lost my house and I'm staying at my mom's, but a lot of people don't have anywhere to go.
In Buracão, where the MST is distributing 1,800 meals a day, the civil defense dug dozens of bodies out of the mud, laid plastic tarps over the most precarious cliff sides, ordered residents to move to shelters and left the area, but hundreds of people are still living in condemned houses there.
The mayor's office comes every year during rainy seasons and asks us to go to shelters, but doesn't give us any other support. Just puts these plastic tarps up, but they go soaked with water. Our bedrooms are in the rear of the house near the cliff, but when it rains, I move our beds into the living room and sleep there with my kids.
The only benefit available to Recife's thousands of internally displaced people is a small emergency rent stipend, a quarter of the minimum wage. Last week, Governor Paulo Câmara announced a 100 million real emergency aid package. He said it will include monthly payments for displaced families, but state lawmakers say the bill hasn't been submitted to the legislature yet.
Everything slid away. My house was destroyed and me and my kids had to get out of there quick. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't want to live in a shelter with 5 kids.
As thousands of people try to figure out where they will go, it's still raining every day. Brian Meyer, teleSUR, Recife.
In France, storms with hail that hit most of the country Saturday left at least 1 person dead, 15 injured, and 15,000 homes without electricity. According to the Minister of the Interior, Gérald Darmanin, the fatal victim was a woman in her 30s who lost her life in the city of Rouen, trapped under a vehicle after being swept away by a mud flow. Meanwhile, 2 of the injured are in a serious condition. Transportation routes were also affected, as well as important agricultural damages. In view of the situation, Darmanin declared that he will propose a state of natural catastrophe so that those affected can speed up the procedures with the insurance companies. Whereas the meteorological services warned that storms could be repeated Sunday in the east of the country, especially in Alsace, Lorraine, or Burgundy. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hello and welcome back to From the South. Saturday, the Donetsk center was shelled by Ukrainian armed forces, according to a report from the authorities of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. As a result of the shelling of the Voroshilovsky district of Donetsk, 5 civilians were killed and 20 were injured and hospitalized in health centers in Donetsk. Local authorities warned there could be a higher number of casualties. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko condemned the development of a Western plan to extend the conflict in Ukraine. During a press conference, Lukashenko stressed the special concern of Russian President Vladimir Putin for the security of his country. Likewise, the Belarusian president pointed out that not only Russia but also his country are under attack from the West, and they need to think about how to defend themselves without increasing tensions in Ukraine. Lukashenko also remarked his fears that the conflict will heighten and lead to a third world war. The Belarusian head of state had warned in other instances that the West needs a long-term war in Ukraine in order to choke Russia and Belarus. Russian Defense Ministry authorities reported the dismantling of a Ukrainian military training center in the north of the country. The Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov reported that missiles launched by Russian aircraft hit an artillery training center of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Sumy region, where foreign instructors were working. The Russian official added that the high-precision rockets also hit a deployment point of mercenaries from other countries near the town of Dachnoye in the Odessa region. At the same time, there were 27 areas for troops and war equipment concentration were destroyed, as well as 2 command posts, 6 missiles and artillery launching systems, ammunition and fuel warehouses in the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. In France, health authorities confirmed Saturday there are 51 cases of monkeypox in the country, most of them in the Parisian region. The public health update represents an increase of 18 infections with the viral disease. As of Friday, 2 p.m. local time, out of the 51 cases identified, 37 belong to the Paris region, which covers 8 departments. So far, no deaths have been reported from monkeypox, and all of those infected are men between 22 and 63 years old. Among the cases, 22 have traveled abroad, and almost all of those infected said they did not know the origin of the infection. And in Germany, the federal parliament, or Bundestag, passed a special defense fund of 100 billion euros to upgrade the German army. The measure to create the fund received 593 votes in favor, 80 deputies voted against it, and 7 abstained. In order to accept this change, the Bundestag had to rewrite the constitution to exempt the fund from the so-called debt brake enforced by fiscal discipline. The money for the fund will be raised with loans and will be used to complete the regular defense budget and thus upgrade the army, acquiring armaments and other equipment such as F-35 fighters. The fund would allow Berlin to meet NATO's goal of spending each year 2% of the country's gross domestic product on defense. On Sunday, China launched a rocket carrying 3 astronauts on a mission to complete construction on its new space station. The trio blasted off in a Long March 2F rocket from the Jiuquan Launch Center in northwestern China's Gobi Desert, said state broadcaster CCTV, with the team to spend 6 months expanding the Tiangong space station. It is expected to become fully operational by the end of the year. China's space program has already seen the nation land a rover on Mars and send probes to the moon. Tiangong's core module entered orbit earlier last year and is expected to operate for at least a decade. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. In Bangladesh, at least 33 people were killed and more than 450 injured Sunday when a fire broke out after a massive explosion inside a container depot near the country's largest seaport. Authorities said the blast occurred in the Sitakunda area of the southeastern Bangladeshi city of Chittagong, and the dead include 2 police fire department officers. On the other hand, they stated that the death toll could rise. Local media reported that some 200 military personnel were sent to the scene to assist the firefighters. According to a preliminary hypothesis, a fire in a container caused a massive explosion after coming into contact with hydrogen peroxide. Tunisian police repressed and blocked dozens of demonstrators protesting against the referendum that President Kais Saied wants to hold in July. Police officers prevented demonstrators from 5 opposition political parties from reaching the headquarters of the electoral board located in the country's capital. The head of that entity was replaced by Saied last month, which opponents see as a further move to extend their control of state institutions. The Tunisian president planned a referendum on constitutional amendments for 25th of July before the legislative elections on December 17th. However, no draft of the new constitution has been published, whose approval will be submitted to the people in the form of a simple yes or no vote. The Batwa, the name by which the so-called pygmies are known in Rwanda and Burundi, have made significant progress in recent years, but they remain a vulnerable population, exposed to multiple precariousness due to lack of resources, services, and opportunities. From there, Oscar Epelde reports.
Arrived on her own amid strong constructions and immediately gave birth to a baby, her second daughter.
I brought health care to local women.
If this new health center did not exist, she would have had to walk several kilometers as she did for her first pregnancy.
Children and their mothers receive free service.
Also, she wouldn't have had the money to pay for the service. She told us that she has very few properties, works as a day laborer on other people's land, and is paid less than $50 a day.
Weighs 2,600 kilograms.
The health center has electricity thanks to an NGO that has installed solar panels on the roof. The electricity network does not reach the hill, and the center was on the verge of ruin because of the price of diesel. This entire mother and child center is really the fruit of solidarity. 6 nurses attend to 3 or sometimes 5 births per day, in addition to about 20 outpatients. The most common diseases, paludism and other parasites, do not hit children when the health service is guaranteed and when the medicines prescribed are dispensed free of charge to those who cannot afford them. The promoter of the center is a priest, a native of this hill, where he grew up using banana leaves as notebooks. He is currently the rector of the University of Gozi after living in Spain for 20 years. He is still experiencing great difficulties in sustaining the management of the center, but is amazed at the strength of solidarity.
When something good is done, there are always forces of love that are there to support, to sustain. That's great.
Darajhe, the baby's father, is 24 years old and smiles brightly as he looks at his second daughter. He has decided to name her Dayiketsa, adoration. Like most Batwa, Darajhe works as a day laborer on other people's crops because he has no land of his own. Since he has to buy food for his mother and family, he is unable to save money to lease the so-called communal land. After 2 nights of observation at the center since Dayiketsa's birth, Dancile, his mother, and her 20-year-old sister, who has come to help her, are returning home. The center is located in the Batwa neighborhood, a little apart from the others. The women of the clan told us that the Batwa who had lands were stolen from them because they were a marginalized community with no rights. They also told us that the things are better now because the children go to school and the women have access to health care. According to baby Dayiketsa's grandmother, before, if they touched a container at the health center, for example, no one would touch it again. However, she says, the situation improved and now they feel like everyone else, but they need support because they don't have a social security card, for example. Dayiketsa's mother shows us her house, a simple house made of sugarcane and adobe that was built a year ago, but they still have not been able to cover the entire roof. We asked her about her dreams. She has many. She says she wants to evolve, but does not know how she will be able to do it. The Batwa are true craftsmen with ceramics and demonstrate their skill and intelligence, even though they have never been able to go to school until now because they had to pay for it. In fact, the community's teenagers are the first Batwa to have been enrolled in schools in this hill since the introduction of free education. What does the future hold for Dayiketsa? Time will tell. Perhaps the future holds a plus of solidarity, hopefully.
Desde la colina de Endaba, Óscar Epelde para teleSUR.
With that, we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I am Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.